within the Rolling Stone brand, it's not just music, and so that's where I fit in. I'm a political journalist. And so, people may open the magazine to read about Britney Spears or read about the latest Jay-Z album, but then they're going to read about politics as well, and that we found is still important to our readership. And so within this larger music-based ecosystem, people are buying the magazine for the music, but they stay for the politics. And we're still sort of a family-owned business with a couple other magazines that are important in terms of the overall financial health of the enterprise. So there's Us magazine, which is a celebrity magazine, which again is a big player in its segment. I think helps this overall financial health and helps fund, what I think is the important journalism that we do. I'm actually bullish on the future of journalism. I think that there are the barriers to entry for producing. Right now we're talking to you on a flip camera that costs $150 and produces high quality video that can be broadcasted across the world in a couple of minutes if it wanted to. So the barriers to entry and the tools for producing high quality journalism are incredibly cheap, and the barriers are very low. And so even as big institutions are dying, it creates the opportunity for journalists themselves to be incredibly entrepreneurial and to come up with new models. And I think it's incumbent on journalists not to wait for their parent organizations to figure it out, or wait for Steve Jobs to figure it out, or wait for some magic device that's going to save everything. Because I think that you're going to end up with a rich Steve Jobs and still a broken journalism. So I think it's incumbent upon journalists, and especially young journalists, to experiment and push the envelope and try and come up with things that have never been done before. And I don't have all of those answers. I see a lot of interesting experimentation, but I think out of that creativity, you're going to come up with something that can be as disruptive in a positive way for journalism as the lack of classified advertising and the disappearance of print advertising has been destructive in a disruptive way to old print organizations. People look at this, I think, too much from the perspective of the legacy news organizations that are there and being threatened by citizen journalism. And I think the real question is whether people are getting good information and able to get the information that they need from journalists, whether they're citizen journalists or professional journalists. So I'm actually someone who's very encouraged and encouraging of citizen journalism, because I think we'd like to tell ourselves that what we do is so special that no one else could possibly do it if they don't have the proper training. But people have shown again and again that that's just not true. And so I think, and you also are seeing a rise of nonprofits who are employing journalists who, instead of releasing a news release, they'll have a blogger who has a voice and an authority of their own and gives their perspective a higher level in the sort of national discourse. And so I think those are good things. I think that they are, I don't think it's an either or. I think mainstream media needs to figure out a business model that's sustainable, or it needs to figure out that the business model isn't sustainable and look to be nonprofit or government supported, or this is too crucial an element of our society to let it collapse. But I don't think that that's in danger. I think, and in fact, I think it may take some big institutions falling apart for people to realize that, okay, we can't let that happen. We can't just sit by and let that have happened. We have to prop up something to replace that. And in replacing that, I think you might end up with something that could be even better than what was there before and dying. So, a lot of people say that journalists, everybody needs to just do what they're best at. So you can be the economist and just focus on the global financial system. But I don't think that that's necessarily true. I don't think that is true to a certain extent. But Rolling Stone has survived by specializing in a perspective, in a sort of a rock and roll sensibility, and in that brand, which can encompass more than a single, okay, we're focused on tech, or we're focused on some narrow slice. It can still be a general interest magazine. I think there's still a place for general interest journalism, but from a specific point of view. So I think as moving forward, the importance of voice, the importance of authority, and again, just that sort of genuine perspective, it remains really important, and so that you can have vehicles whose brands are much broader than clean tech or economics. Given the commodification of journalism, the very sort of straight down the center, this is the facts, ma'am, this is the who, what, where, when, and why, all of that's very easy to reproduce by people who aren't necessarily professionals. I mean, very easy. It depends on the war zone, of course it's not easy, but on many issues you don't necessarily need the professional perspective, or if there's so many people who could provide that it's actually pretty cheap and it doesn't provide much of a business model. But the people who are succeeding are very often the ones who have very strong feelings about the news that they're covering, or very strong, an innovative or an original voice about what they're covering. And for American journalism, that's a real sea change. We had Walter Cronkite, who was the sort of voice of America, and these voice of God news anchors who would tell us the news in the straight AP style, and that sensibility reigned supreme for a long time. And I think American media is becoming a bit more like British media, in that you have conservative newspapers and liberal newspapers, and the voice and the sensibility starts to pervade the enterprise. And I'm not as alarmed by that as many people are. I mean, I practice a form of journalism at Rolling Stone that is reporting driven, but it also has perspective, and I feel like you can do both of those things responsibly and in fact create journalism that's more interesting for readers, because as long as you're sort of transparent about your perspective, that's actually can be much more interesting to readers than reading somebody who's playing it down the middle, even though they may actually have a perspective that they're hiding and being dishonest about. But you would hate to lose the independent, objective voices as well. I mean, I think that's if America loses the Washington Post, New York Times, straight up the middle reporting, I don't think that'll be a real loss.